You're listening to The Streaming Wars, the podcast that discusses all of the latest happenings regarding your favorite streaming services. Find out which service is winning the war this time around.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of The Streaming Wars. I'm your host Dustin and Tony is with me, and we are here to talk all about the news related to the streaming services. This time around we have a bunch of different topics to discuss. Specifically, Disney Plus is now 1 week out, and Tony has gotten his hands on the service as well, so we're going to get his feel of it. We're also going to have some concerns and the highlights of some of the stuff that's happened after 1 week after the service. We're going to talk about that stuff. Then we just have a couple of other small things. We have got a topic related to an interview that John Stankey, the Warner Media CEO, gave recently that we're going to talk about. And then we're also going to be talking a little bit more about streaming live TV services, specifically Hulu TV and at&t TV Now. YouTube TV will come up, but we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. And while we haven't really discussed a lot of that, we are going to start covering some of that because it is a streaming service, and some of these work hand in hand with some of the other services. Obviously, Hulu has their different tiers of service that they offer, but one of them is a live TV version. So these things are going to kind of go hand in hand. So we're going to talk about that as well. So we're going to go straight into the news, and without any discussion topics that I just mentioned, there's only one thing I want to quickly talk about. Crackle. So this was an article that popped up over on Core Cutter News, which is a website you're going to hear a lot, or you're going to hear us talking about a lot, specifically because they report a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about here on the podcast. But if you're unfamiliar with what Crackle is a streaming service that originally was owned by Sony. Sony put a bunch of their older sitcoms that they had on there, and they had other content. Seinfeld was on there for a while. I believe the series Drinking Coffee in Cars with Comedians, I think that idea originated from something that was originally on Crackle. Crackle had some other original series that were on there as well, but Sony recently sold off Crackle. I don't know how recently because I don't have that, but they sold it to a company called Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment. And I thought this was kind of interesting, but basically Crackle is going to be getting a massive overhaul and a kind of a rebranding based off of their new owners. And the reason I wanted to bring this up was not necessarily about the fact that Crackle still exists and it's owned by somebody else, but more of why would Sony get rid of a streaming service? And it leads me to kind of a question, which is we see that Viacom and CBS recently they're merging back together. Viacom has Pluto TV, which is a discussion for a whole nother time, but they have Pluto TV, which is an ad-supported television service, and then you've got CBS All Access for CBS, and the two of them are also creating content elsewhere, but neither one of them are looking. There was specifically Viacom gave their quarterlies, and they said they're not looking at jumping in to the deep end of the streaming services side of things. They've already got these other things that are successful, and they're completely content with. And Sony seems to be kind of pulling back their focus on streaming services. I'm not sure if it's specifically because of the other competition that's out there, and they're not sure if they can, match or outpace the other competition. But recently we saw PlayStation Vue, which was Sony's version of a live TV service. They're closing that down as of January 2020. They sold off Crackle to another company, and now they're supposedly, based off of articles I've read, it says that Sony's going to be refocusing their focus on gaming, which is what they've always been known for, but they're not going to be focusing on the streaming side of things for a while. They're still going to be obviously producing content similar to the way how Paramount Television and CBS Studios produces content for other providers, but they're getting out of, kind of that side of it. So I wonder if you had a thought about whether or not there are certain companies out there, specifically entertainment companies, that have realized, we can be completely content with providing the content, but we don't want to be putting our companies in a position like Netflix is currently, where they're spending $15 billion a year on content to just make sure that they can keep their subscriber base. Do you think that there's a reason why some of these entertainment companies are deciding not to get into the streaming while other ones are, like I said, jumping into the deep end?
I have a few thoughts on this. I think it just depends on per company and what their identity is. What choice are they going to make? Are they going to spend, it's not just even buying and producing licensing fees and rights for these shows, and then producing those shows. Like that's what we talk about, and that's kind of what's sexy in like a lot of these like news. But you also have to invest in like leadership infrastructure. You have to have, the correct, let's just call them content curators in these companies to figure out what shows they're going to want and to bring them in. Like that talent's kind of hard. I mean, you're almost like picking stocks, like there's a reason why algorithms are better at picking stocks than humans are. It's just because, a lot of the stuff is just really hard to figure out. Okay, like what, one, can we feasibly afford? And then two, like what are our customer base? What are they going to pay for? That's hard to figure out. And you need talented people in that industry to work for you. And so it's, okay, how do we hire those people? Well, in some of these up and comer players, it's like, is it worth it trying to get in that race of this hiring pool? And, when supply goes up, when demand goes up, then prices will rise. So you have this like price war and salary war for these executives to come in, and that's one part of it. And also just some of these companies just might just focus on being a movie company and then just licensing out their content to other people. They might not want to just go all in on like, okay, we're going to stream everything when our backlog is going to be everywhere. Like that takes a lot, and I think we're seeing some growing pains from if you just look at Disney Plus, if you look at at&t. Warner Media, if you just look at Apple, the growing pains of getting into that industry is kind of hard. And I can see like a Viacom, I can see other studios like Sony just being like, you know what, we can just focus on what we do best and not really spend a bunch of money chasing down something that might not work. I heard a quote where I know Ron Swanson said it on Parks and Rec, but I heard a quote basically saying like, you can only whole ass one thing, you can't whole ass two things. So for these companies, it just might be that, we're really good at this one type of content creation. Why are we going to chase down these leads when they might not even work, and they might not even need to even get into the streaming wars? Like AT&T is they're losing, live TV's customers, they're losing, direct TV customers and things like that. And so like, okay, what's a new base of revenue? Where else can we go? Okay, we have Time Warner, we have, Warner Brothers, we have HBO. It's like, okay, well, we have these assets. Okay, where are we going to go next? Disney, it's like, well, okay, let's be honest. It's like about time that they do something with their library. And so they're going to make a whole streaming service out of it. That makes sense. It's a logical extension of their business. They're not going out of their way to do something that is antithetical to their core. That's kind of my take on it. It's just like, it's not for everyone. That might be the best decision for some of these companies, is to not, directly compete in the streaming wars. They could be players in it, but have their content licensed out to, let's just say Netflix, where, okay, well, they're going to make easy money just by licensing content out. Yeah, Netflix might get the actual user themselves, but they made the content, they get some of the revenue. It's kind of simple.
And I've talked about this before, about the idea that Warner Media as a company has always been a company that creates content for a lot of other places. While they create things for their own benefit, like the movie side of things, a lot of their television, they sell to other companies. CBS, NBC, the CW, a lot of those channels, Fox, they all have content that is created by Warner Brothers. Some of the most popular series that have been created, or that Warner Brothers has created, have been on other networks. Friends was on NBC. Big Bang Theory was on CBS. It's not something new. The Warner Brothers has been doing this for years and years and years. So it's interesting. And Sony in the regards of like Columbia Pictures, and CBS in the regards of, or Viacom in the sense of Paramount Television, they've been creating content for other channels as well. It's not specifically and only content for themselves. Disney has always been a company that creates stuff for themselves. That might change slightly with the addition of 20th Century Fox or 21st Century Fox, in the sense of if they are creating content, they could create content for other broadcast channels and things like that. But for the most part, Disney creates content for themselves. They're in the business of creating content for their own channels, whether it be cable or broadcast, and their own services and their own films and things like that. That's the difference. Netflix didn't have that luxury. A lot of the content that Netflix originally had when Netflix came to be was content that they were basically backing and paying money for, but it was smaller production companies that were producing it. And now recently Netflix is, pushing for more ownership of some of these series, but for the most part, a lot of the content on Netflix still is made by other companies, including Warner Brothers, including Lionsgate Television, including Skydance Entertainment. There's a lot of other media companies out there that are creating content for Netflix. Netflix by themselves can't create. And as we saw in the investor call for HBO Max, HBO Max is going to have content. 50% of it is going to be produced by Warner Brothers and Warner Media, but the other 50% could easily be created by anybody else. I'm sure there's going to be situations where Paramount Television creates content for them because they already have content that's going. If you've been watching Watchmen on HBO, you'll notice that at the very end, not only is the Warner Brothers shield there, but it also has the Paramount Mountain. So it's a co-production because they aren't always going to foot the bill for themselves, but they can share in the profits of the successfulness of the show. It's an interesting development, and I wanted to bring it up because it's something that I think is going to be very important. You're going to see different companies. Warner Media is in a position where, because they're owned by a company like at&t has to warrant the purchase of Warner Media. And the way they do that is by saying, we're going to have a service that we can team with our existing services, and we can make it a better product to sell to a customer, and that in turn can build our business. That's why they went after Warner Media. That's what they've been telling investors. At the same time, you've got a company like Disney who they produce stuff for themselves. So why not create a service that they put that content that they produce out there for people to get, and in turn get some money for it? So it's a very interesting situation. It also explains why a company like Universal or Paramount with CBS would go the route of doing smaller services like Peacock or CBS All Access, because they're not looking to have this massive library of stuff. They can still have a library of content. They can still offer plenty of content for their subscribers or the people who are using the service without having to foot a massive bill for an enormous amount of content. So the next thing I want to talk about is live TV, because it kind of goes with some of this. at&t TV Now, which was just recently rebranded from DirecTV TV Now or DirecTV Now or at&t Watch TV. There was 3 different companies. They all somehow got looped into one, and it's become at&t TV Now. Their price their price is actually up as we're recording this. It just jumped up $15. Their low level tier, it went from $50 to $65 a month. Wow. Meanwhile, Hulu is jumping up to $54.99 on December 18th. Their price is going up too for live TV. Then at the same time, there was a glitch. I saw this online. YouTube TV, there was potential that it was going up because something got announced, but then Google came back and said, no, we're not raising the price on YouTube TV. It's staying the exact same price. And I have to wonder, so with Hulu and at&t TV Now raising their prices, and at&t TV Now raising it $15, making them one of the more expensive options out there, it begs the question of, if the direction is to go to the streaming side of live TV, offer the service rather than having to have someone have the hardwired version of the broadband cable that they have in their house, what is the advantage of raising the price? Obviously, it costs more to run. As Sony pointed out when they announced that they were closing down PlayStation Vue, they basically said the reason why this is happening is because it's not exactly inexpensive to manage this and have all these deals and contracts with all of these stations that you're providing your customer base without running into problems. Sony ran into a lot of problems because they started out at a very low price. They jacked the price up without actually adding any additional channels, and that caused people to, kind of go somewhere else where the price wasn't as high, or they only had what they needed. I feel as if the intent with the live TV options is that it is cheaper than cable. Basic cable packages are somewhere around $100, but as they slowly creep up towards that basic cable price without getting that much more, what is the advantage? And I feel like $50 was a good medium because it's like half as much. I've I don't remember if we talked about this on air, but I've talked about it with you about, I've contemplated switching over to a live TV option because I don't watch that many shows. And the shows that I do watch, I tend to record them. They sit on my DVR for a really long time, and I'll get around to viewing them when I do, but I normally will view them all together at once. There's no advantage of me having live TV because I haven't for years watched a show live. I think the only content that I've watched live is maybe Game of Thrones or something like that on HBO. But again, you could do that with HBO Now. You could watch it live. So or HBO Go, because I subscribe through my cable service. So the thing is, I have to question what is could we be seeing, and this is a way larger topic, obviously, that could take up way more time than we were planning. But you look at the streaming live services, and as they increase in price, along with the additional services that are popping up, you get to a point where you're creating a larger bundle of services, and that is in some ways more curated to your liking. You're going to subscribe to Disney Plus or Hulu TV Live to get your services, or you're going to subscribe to HBO Max, and you're going to build your own type of bundle. But that's how cable TV originated as. They originated as you build a bundle of different channels, packages that you want, and then you pay the X price that you want. And then it became, as time progressed, it got more expensive, and they just started grouping more channels together in the packages. And I feel like, are we going to reach a point where live TV options are going to get too expensive, and then we're just going to see more and more companies drop out of that idea of even doing that if the same parent company has a streaming service that they're also trying to promote? Because, you're not going to necessarily do both. You could bundle them together. Obviously, HBO Max has talked about bundling at&t TV Now along with the same way as Hulu and Disney Plus have a bundle with ESPN Plus. There's these bundles, but it comes down to then you're limited by whatever the content that they have is. As a whole, how do you feel the future of live TV really is going?
I think it's changing. I don't think it's going away in the way that we know it. I think that cable and hardwired cable is going to go away as we know it. I think live TV will live on. For me, the reason why I got YouTube TV was because I wanted to watch an Alabama football game that came on ABC, and for some reason I couldn't get ABC in my area, and I didn't have a digital tuner. So next football season, I'm going to get a digital tuner to save me some money. Oh, and then also I wanted to watch the Democratic primaries live. It's boring to read one. To watch one, after it happens. There's something about live debating that just really makes it interesting. Frankly, it was easier just to get YouTube TV, to watch ABC, and to watch other shows that come on ESPN. I also like to watch, and then to watch, I think that debate was on CNBC. It's like, I'm not going to go get a streaming service just for CNBC. I don't even know where to watch CNBC outside live TV. And so for me, I wanted to watch those things in real time, and it was just simpler just to get YouTube TV, which has about like 50 channels, blanket statements, all in real time. And that's pretty much what I use it for, is to watch sports. If I can find something better that streams sports in real time, then I'm going to get it, and then I'm going to drop YouTube TV. I think how the future is going to go is, I think that there's going to be more separation in the space. I think that a service like ESPN will come out, they're going to do their own thing, and that's going to be great. But right now, a lot of these streaming services kind of focus on shows that have been produced ahead of a time, and they get released, like Game of Thrones, perfect example. It got released every Sunday night, right? It wasn't live, it just got dumped there, and that's great. But I think for the next evolution of streaming, right, I know that we're talking about the wars and which company is going to do this and that and who's going to succeed. I think the next evolution, though, is going to be, okay, we've done streaming in terms of we can watch all these videos wherever we want, but I want to stream something in real time. I want this game in real time. I want, this channel per se in real time. I think that's going to be helpful. And if I can see that in these services, that's going to be great. But right now, like Netflix, you don't watch anything in real time. Disney Plus, you don't watch anything in real time. I know the ESPN bundle you can, but from my understanding, the ESPN bundle, it's just hard to work with. So it's like, well, why would I do that anyway? So that's kind of my view on it. I think a lot of people, obviously I haven't done a poll, so this is my just best guess. I would bet that a lot of people use, YouTube TV, Hulu TV, kind of like me. They're going to have all these different services that they're going to use, but there's always that one little thing that they can't find that they need in real time, and that's what they do it for. It's like my mom, I try to get her to go to something, and it's like, they don't have the Hallmark channel. It's like, well, for her, that's important to watch Hallmark. And I think all of us have our little shows, our little things that we care about that we want to watch just in time, and we can't. And so when the streaming market, matures a little bit and they focus on, a different problem of streaming just in time content, then I think that's when we're going to see the next evolution of, cutting the cord, moving away from traditional cable and moving into this newer age. So I think Hulu TV and at&t now are just stopgaps. They're just stopgaps for, channels and platforms and companies that don't have their own streaming service and they're trying to hang on. They're just stopgaps. I think that they're going to move away, and we're going to transition to CBS. CBS All Access is just they're going to have their CBS, news network play and have the CBS, channel stream sports in real time. I know that they do sometimes for that, but on a more consistent basis. NBC, stream the Olympics in real time, stream other football games in real time. ABC, same thing. I think we're going to get to that point. And when we get to that point, I think it's going to be great.
And that makes perfect sense in the larger scheme of things, because when you look at companies like Paramount, Viacom, CBS, when you look at a company like that, they have the ability that they could do that, but they would just be limited to whatever their company has to offer as far as the streaming side of it. When you look at NBC, they could easily put a live stream of whatever is currently airing on NBC or their news networks or their sports networks, and it's all ad supported. So it's like basically just having the infrastructure costs from having the service, having the service itself be able to show it, but you're still getting the same ad revenue. And in some cases, you'd probably be reaching more than the standard television ratings that you would. But like when you look at a company like Warner Brothers, they have lots of channels. They obviously have a lot of the Turner channels. They have plenty of sports deals with certain sports companies like NBA and the NCAA. There is sports, and I know that ultimately it's going to come down to there's only a couple of things that people are really seeking out live. They're seeking out news, they're seeking out sports, and they're seeking out special events. And special events aren't such a big thing because they don't happen all that often, but the news and sports is something that does happen. And I think that the regional markets are going to start to dry up over the next couple of years, and you're going to start seeing just more national, with maybe like the national versions of these major stations like CNN kind of absorbing smaller regional areas to report more of some of the local news, which is, this is just what I envision, because like you said, this is probably what's going to end up happening. HBO Max has already said that they're looking at trying to combine elements of AT&T TV now with the service HBO Max. They've also talked about how within the first 2 years, they're looking at adding live sports events and special events, and they have a massive news backing with CNN and some of the other channels that they have that are part of that. And the thing is, you can see the effects of regional stuff compared to national stuff. There's a lot of you can see it currently with newspapers. There's a lot of newspapers that are very local newspapers that are slowly closing down. And then there's only the bigger newspapers that are left. And even some of those are now starting to dry up or to go out of business. And the thing is, while some of them have converted over to the internet and doing a lot more focus on stuff on the internet rather than in print, you look at situations where you can't have a huge following for a local newspaper when your audience level is so small, and just it's like a niche audience that you can't serve productively and efficiently. So I see that happening with television news stations in the same regard. I feel like that is probably where we're going to head to. But then it goes back to, well, how does that stuff go in line with the future of these services? And honestly, a lot of the stuff could just get boiled down to eventually a lot of the content that we currently see on channels can be absorbed into live feeds on streaming services. It's not that far out there. With Disney, they can put all of their channels that they currently have, ABC, they can put all that stuff and roll it into Hulu, and that's where you would view it. Now, some of this isn't going to happen for quite some time, but I think you're exactly right in the sense of there's only so many things that people are going to be watching live and want to be able to watch live. And the easier it is to just watch the stuff as it's released, it's going to change that. So there's that.
Because I don't want live TV. I just want those live channels.
Right.
Like, I don't need nothing. No disrespect to the Ion channel. I don't need it when I only want to watch 3 channels.
Right.
I don't want to pay $50 and get 50 channels and I only want to watch 3 of them. Like, I'm all for, paying a fair price, but I want to watch live channels. I want to watch, I guess what I say is, I don't want to copy over the existing setup of, one of those coax cables on the wall, swap that out with an Ethernet cable, and there we go. That's not what I want. I don't think that's what a lot of people want.
Yeah.
They want that selection. They want that. I just want one thing in real time, or these 3 things in real time.
And I think some of the services out there, like we talked about NBA TV a little while back, I think like services like that are going to serve the sports fans a lot better than something like ESPN that only has rights to certain things. And while it can be costly and it can get expensive, I think that the problem is that because sports games are so broken down into regional areas based off of who the audience is who are watching them, I think that becomes a problem as a bigger thing, which will maybe change over the course of the next couple of years too, where rather than having blackout areas for certain games because of the regional situations that they have, you just see it where you get to pick what you want to watch or something like that, and then broadcast is how it changes. I don't know, but it definitely is something that is going to change no matter what, because it just can't continue on the way it is. And I do feel like as these things as these live TV services, they creep up in price, less and less people are going to be inclined to purchase them. I don't want to pay $65 so that I can have access to 3 channels or 4 channels in addition to some of this content on some of those channels are also on other services that I already subscribe to. If I want to be able to have my kids watch Disney Junior, they could just watch the older content on the Disney Plus app rather than me having to look for a service that even offers that. I don't need duplicates of content just for the sake of it. So the next big discussion I want to talk about is Disney Plus 1 week later. I gave my thoughts based off of Disney Plus last week. I have a couple of more things that I want to talk about, but you subscribe to Disney Plus and you've messed around with it, so I'm going to get your thoughts on what you think of Disney Plus.
First off, I got married, so that was nice. And my now wife is really into Star Wars, and we wanted to watch it together. So got the service Sunday, watched the first 2 episodes of The Mandalorian, and I love The Mandalorian. I think it's great. I think it's a great integration with the Lucasfilm and the Star Wars aesthetic in general. I think that this is the type of show that Disney needed to launch with. I think this is the type of show that other players need to kind of emulate, not necessarily like Star Wars, but just a good high quality show that doesn't skip on budgets. It's not excessive. It's not, ungodly expensive, but they put some time and money into it. They put some thought, they put some love into it. They really thought about what they're going to do and what the flagship is going to be. Like, what is the tone of Disney Plus? And I think they nailed it. I think the UI, the user experience is fine. I found a little tiny bugs, but that's just because I'm a programmer and I was like, all right, that's a bug. Signing up was a little bit tricky. Creating profiles was even more annoying. Just trying to add new people just became tedious because wasn't remembering the name correctly, or the picture wasn't updating. I don't know, stuff like that. Nothing major, just little things like that. You could feel like the app was a little bit rushed. I was setting up on my computer and sending profiles. I could feel like the website was a little bit rushed, but that's it's here nor there. I got the bundle, right? So talking about bundling, Disney Plus bundles with Hulu and ESPN Plus. That's for $12.99. I was like, you know what? I like sports. Yeah, I like stuff on Hulu. Like, if I'm gonna dump Netflix, I could get Disney Plus, which with the bundle, which is inherently going to be cheaper than what I already pay for Netflix, by like $1 or $2. So I tried to log into Hulu, and it didn't work. I tried to log into ESPN Plus, and that didn't work. Then I immediately texted Dustin, and I was like, hey, man, do you know what's going on? Have you heard of anything? And he said, no, which was a little disconcerting because Dustin pretty much knows everything about the news and what's going on and the user reactions. So I was like, okay, fine. It took me about 45 minutes to figure out how to access the page to get to activating the Hulu part and the ESPN Plus part. And that was very frustrating because there was no obvious menu to do it. There was nothing simple about where this was, and I tried to Google it and I couldn't find anything, which probably means I didn't do enough, but it was very unintuitive. That was very annoying when you pay that much money for something and you expect to get it, and it's not like in a sense of entitlement, just like I don't mind jumping through hoops when you tell me what the hoops to jump are. That's fine, I can handle that. But when you promise me that I'm going to get 2 extra services and I can't find out where to do them, I'm pretty annoyed. And I feel like that was a really big error on Disney's side. Oh, one thing, right? I'm on the Roku app, and I can't say this for all the other sites, but this is just for me. On the Roku, it took me and my wife a few minutes to figure out how to get the closed captioning on. And obviously, accessibility controls are very important. People with hearing impairments and visual impairments, they really, rely on these types of things. And I think Netflix has done a great job of trying to make those as simple to use as possible, to bring up those menus. And for me, Disney Plus, it just felt very unintuitive to find that menu for closed captioning. And so we finally found it. It took about 5 minutes, and that was frustrating because it was like, like other services, it's not that hard to find closed captioning. And yeah, that's comparison, and we shouldn't compare to things, but we've essentially had, like, with Netflix, with Hulu, with all these other partners, even like Hulu TV or YouTube TV, like the same basic premise of finding accessibility controls is kind of the same. We kind of laid it on a de facto standard, and Disney Plus kind of bucked that trend, which it's fine, it's their imperative, but it was hard to find the accessibility controls. So that was one other big knock on the service that I didn't really like. But otherwise, I liked it. I know that there's been a little bit of backlash over user bugs and sign up that day and stuff like that. But for me, working on more of the software side, it's just like, when you don't deal with that large volume of consumers, right? Using your site, using your infrastructure, it's kind of hard to gauge those things out when you building a complex website and an experience as Disney Plus's website is. I can see how there are going to be bugs. It's just hard to out of the box gate test and make sure that every little thing is working on the launch day. Like, you're going to miss things. Like, that's just the way it is. Now, should that be the way things are? Obviously not. I like to be a perfectionist, but I do understand work requirements and how those things are. Also, remember that Disney also launched on how many different platforms? You got the web, the Roku, the Apple TV, Amazon Fire. Those are just like on the actual TVs themselves. Then you have all the devices like Android and iOS devices of various different, sizes. Like, their development teams had to do a lot of work to get those up and running. So, it's a lot easier to make fixes and to add features when you already have the base, done. But to create a base foundation for all those different things in a kind of a relatively short amount of time, that's hard. And so from an engineering perspective, I kind of have a lot more grace for these companies, because I understand to a level of magnitude, like how frustrating, how hard it could be to deliver a product to that point. But overall, I was happy with Disney Plus. It was a good experience. It was good. It was simple. I like the content. I like their search. Commenting on how you search for something should be kind of boring. Like, there should be of course you should be able to do that. But I liked the suggestions that I got. I thought that they were actually like contextually aware of what I was trying to search, not just like per letter, like matching like each letter to like a title. It kind of understood like the theme that I was going for. I like this idea of collections. So they had like the Star Wars collection, the Infinity Saga collection. They had a Darth Vader collection. So it just showed all the videos that Darth Vader appeared in. I'm like, well, that was kind of nice. I liked that stuff. I thought that was a really cool element. Yeah, that's kind of my basic thoughts. It was fine. It was a good premiere. It's going to draw me back when The Mandalorian next airs.
1 weekend, here's the things that I've noticed that I didn't necessarily mention last time around. Most of these are going to come across as complaints, but it's more of I just hope that they get added. So first thing is first, there's absolutely no labels to show you what you've already watched, or there, at least the versions. Now, like I said, I've downloaded this on multiple different devices. And on the variety of different devices that I've downloaded on, it's not, some of these functions I have not seen because I'm not using them like all the time. But for example, on my Android phone and the Samsung TV, there's no place that says like if I start watching something, it doesn't give me the option to go back to where I was. It doesn't have like a resume option. It just has it start back from the very beginning. Now, it's not obviously difficult to fast forward to where you were, fast forward to a certain point of where you were, but it's just one of those things that you kind of expect when it comes to the streaming services that you already have. You know, when you start watching something, you have to exit out because you have a phone call come up or whatever. You've got something that happens, you can't finish it. You don't want to have to go back and be able to start from the beginning. It's just an added extra task that you don't necessarily, you're not expecting. And that's
I can actually comment on that one issue on my Roku, and this is once again on Sunday night. I was able to resume where I was watching The Mandalorian, and I started Rogue One, but we scrapped that idea. So I can't say for all these different platforms.
Yeah, I know Roku was one because on Sunday I was chatting with somebody within the Disney community in general, and they had said that the Roku suddenly had an update over the weekend that added continue watching or, you know, the resume feature to, you know, the system. Now that's still not available on some of the other devices that I'm currently using, which the Samsung Smart TV is the one I'm using the most at this point. But there's a couple other things. So the audio issue that I had before of watching the actual service on my Samsung TV, it's still having that same weird half a second audio glitch where it's like redoing the half second audio and then it's all off sync. I still have that problem. Tried to figure out some sort of fix for it. It doesn't always work, but basically like pausing it before exactly at 1 second of the video playing and then waiting a second. In other words, like giving it a second to buffer prevents that from happening sometimes. So there's still that. But the watch thing is something that really bugs me, because when you get outside of the original content that they have that's new, and there's not, you know, an overabundance of it. I want to be able to see if I'm watching a television series or my kids are watching a television series. I want to be able to see which ones I've already watched or which ones they've already watched, so I'm not replaying an episode that they've already seen. This is very, very specific when it comes to the cartoons for children, which is odd because it is something that is present in some of the other Disney apps, specifically Disney Now, which is the service that you get if you subscribe to the Disney channels through your cable provider. They have a Disney Now app, and they have a decent catalog of shows that you can watch, but every time you watch an episode, it'll actually show how far the episode you got into the episode, or if you completed it, just by a simple red bar at the bottom of the thumbnail. I want to see something like that on Disney Plus, because it feels like that's just a common thing that should be there. Either have the bar showing how far you've watched it, or show that you've watched it, how like Netflix puts a little label at the bottom of the thumbnail saying watched because you've already seen it, because that's helpful. I want to see something like that. The audio issues I'd love to get worked out, but I'm going to be honest, while I appreciate the fact that they were available on all these different devices, I'm not really seeing the smart TVs getting the abundance of updates in the near future, specifically because there's no real reason for it. They're individual smart TVs, while it's great to have the ability to use the apps, they're not going to get like Android, iOS, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and the Rokus are going to be the devices that get the most updates, and they're going to get the updates more frequently. If for no other reason, then the smart TVs, they don't update as frequently. Like my Android phone will update every single night while I'm sleeping. That's when I schedule all of my updates, and it will update every single app that has an update at that time. So it could happen literally within 24 hours of the update launching. The Samsung Smart TV, and I'm assuming most other smart TVs are like this too, they don't connect to do updates as frequently. I know for a fact because YouTube had, there's a YouTube app on there that for years was the same thing, and then just recently it changed to like a new interface. The Netflix just changed to a new interface. It was like they rolled out a bunch of updates at once for some of the apps rather than updating, single apps here and there. It's just a minor thing, but I'd like to see it happen. I'd like to see updates occur. But I know that the main focus is going to be on those major devices, which is completely understandable. The other thing that is not so much a complaint about the interface by itself or the service, but I've come to a realistic conclusion that there's going to be a problem with content. So here's the thing. I am one of those people who I'm very much in the mindset that I like binge watching stuff. I do not disagree with the method of not releasing stuff in a binge method. And honestly, if it's super quality TV, I will make time, like the 2 episodes of The Mandalorian. I signed up day 1. I watched The Mandalorian, the first episode on day 1. Second episode of Mandalorian came out last Friday. I made the time to make sure that I watched it that Friday. I wanted to see it because it's good television. When HBO releases series, I tend, if it's something that I'm super interested in, like currently Watchmen, or previously the last cycle of shows was Succession, I will make sure that I watch those the day of, if not shortly after they premiere, because I'm really interested in seeing the next installment of that program. However, there are other shows out there that I don't have a desire to needing to watch immediately as they air, and I let the episodes build up as they slowly release, and then I just tend to watch them when I have the time or when I'm in the mood to watch that specific show. For example, HBO, The Righteous Gemstones was a show that I thought was amusing, it was interesting, but I'd rather watch it all together rather than watching it when it releases every single week. Disney has obviously gone the method of releasing stuff episodic weekly, which I completely understand, and back at HBO, the HBO Max investor call that they specifically were talking about how, we like to build the anticipation for something releasing, and then it builds the popularity, and I don't disagree with that. It was a good point. When a new show comes out on HBO, people are watching about it, people are talking about it at the time that it's coming out. It brings that group of viewers together if they log on to social media and start chatting about it. The same thing with Disney. Disney, it makes perfect sense. A new movie comes out for Disney, people are going to talk about the movie because it's coming out and they went and saw it. That's happened with the Marvel stuff, it's happened with Star Wars, and now it's happening with the Disney Plus shows. The problem that I'm foreseeing, though, is that when I look at the original content that Disney has, that they've offered up front, out the gate, I'm having a problem with finding enough content that I actually want to watch. Now, that's not to say they don't have content. They've got tons of content. They brag about how much content they actually have on there. But when I scroll through the vast majority of the movies and the television series that are not originals, I look at the stuff and I say, okay, yes, I would maybe watch that show again because I've already seen it, or maybe I'd check out this content that they've made available at some point, but it's nothing that I'm super excited about or interested in. Now, at the same time, I know my children are looking at shows and they don't care about the same things that I do, and this is a very much service that, in my opinion, is geared towards children. They just look at it as, what can we watch, and I want to watch it now. But when I look at the original content, I look at the fact that I'm going a week without any new original content. And currently, the shows that they currently have that are available, I'm not watching High School Musical, I'm not watching Encore, or Marvel's Hero Project, or The World According to Jeff Goldblum. I don't have any desire to watch those shows. The only two shows that are actual series and not shorts are The Mandalorian and The Imagineering Story. Well, The Imagineering Story only has 6 episodes, and then it's done. And The Mandalorian only has 8 episodes, and it's done. And both of those shows will be over before the end of December. When those shows run out, there is no other ongoing series that they have announced that are coming. And obviously, we're only a week out. Things could change. Things could be different, and I acknowledge that. But it feels like, how much content is there going to be on a normal basis that people are going to get super interested in? And it's a concern that I have, because the Marvel shows that they've announced and everyone's really hyped about, none of them are coming until at the very earliest August of 2020. The other Star Wars shows, while they are currently in the middle of filming The Mandalorian Season 2, it's still a ways out. You're not going to see that at least until probably late next year too, because of just post-production and stuff. But then you've got the other Star Wars shows that they've talked about. They're not even on the schedule for within the first year. So between now and the time that the first Marvel show, Falcon and Winter Soldier, come out, you've only got one show that fills the desire for the fan base of, the same fan base as Marvel or Star Wars, which is they've got the Clone Wars season, the animated series. They've got season 7 coming out in February. But outside of that one series, there's nothing out of any of these big properties that they have. Pixar is creating a Monsters Inc. show, but that's not on the schedule as coming out anytime in the immediate future. And I just keep thinking, while some of these docuseries that they're producing and some of the short series that they're producing could be entertaining, if I'm only going to get a 5 to 7 minute episode once a week, is that really enough content to keep me interested in the service? And while I am subscribed for the next 3 years, I guess the better question is not so much about how many subscribers they have, which, by the way, it was announced that they had 10 million subscribers on day one. It's not so much about how many subscribers they have, but it's how often are people actually using the service? Because with Netflix, I use the service at least once a week. And when I'm using it, I'm watching, maybe an entire series, or half a series or whatever. Like this past weekend, I watched an entire series of a show that came out earlier this month, and it was 8 episodes, 30 minutes apiece, and I spent 4 hours watching it. I can't do that on Disney Plus because there isn't that type of content available for me to watch. And I know it just comes across as, yes, well, you just want stuff to be binge. No, it's not just that. It just feels like there's a lack of content. We gave Apple a ton of crap about not having a ton of content. When they launched, they had a total of 9 original content items. 4 of them were programming for children, and one of them was a documentary, a nature documentary, and then the other 4 were the high profile series. But when you look at what Disney launched with as their premiere stuff, they have 2 original scripted series. They have 4 nonfiction series. They had 4 short series, which aren't releasing new episodes every single week. And even if they are, they're only on average about 6 minutes a piece. And then they had the 2 movies, The Lady and the Tramp and Noelle. And I can tell you, I watched Noelle. It was not very good. The Mandalorian is very good. The Imaginarium story I've enjoyed. I watched some of the short series. But overall, as a whole, there's not a whole lot of content. And they haven't really announced a whole lot of content that's coming soon. So I have concerns about, are they just relying on the back catalog of content they have to hold people over, and will that actually work? They have a lot of content that people can watch that's older, but that content was always available in some way, whether you could rent it, or you could buy the DVDs or whatever. You could have watched a lot of this content elsewhere. And it's concerning because I feel like there's going to be these big gaps in the original content that they're releasing. I just wanted to express my concerns with that.
I don't think that you're complaining about a bingeable model. Like, you can't binge now. You're not complaining that Disney Plus isn't Netflix and you just want Netflix and blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's what you're saying. I think you're saying that you want your experience on Disney Plus worth your time.
Exactly.
I feel like right now, from just hearing you and our talks privately, it just seems like, besides your kids, the only reason why you got it, I mean, yeah, we do this show, we check out stuff, but the only reason why it's just like right now it seems The Mandalorian. That's the only thing that you look forward to on this platform is The Mandalorian. If not that, then you're not going to use it. And that makes sense of why you want more content, either in terms of like bingeable models, which Disney Plus isn't doing that, but you want other titles that could be worth your time. Like HBO, yeah, we all love Game of Thrones. We all do. Okay, most people do. But they have other solid content out there. Chernobyl, Ballers, other things that I can't think of right now.
Succession,
right?
Watchmen, Westworld. I mean, they have constant flow of content. Like every single week, there's at least 1 hour drama, and then there's 2 half-hour comedy dramas or whatever. But they have a consistent flow of content year-round.
Yeah, when you get on the app, it's worth your time. Like, you're not just doing a one-off thing and that's fine. I'll come back next Tuesday and get on this app and dust it off and see what new. Like, no, like on HBO, it's worth your time to, start a new show. All right, finish that. Maybe find something else. And then, like you had a great night watching HBO and you got through a couple different properties and there you go. Like, you got your HBO experience. Where at Disney Plus, you're just only really getting one show. If you like, for us, we just like The Mandalorian right now. That's the only new show, which is, fine. All right, I know things start small, but if they don't do that, then the audiences for Disney Plus is going to be frustrated just because like they're going to be very limited in what they want to watch. At least Apple TV Plus, right? We do give Apple TV a lot of crap, but at least that they have right now a steady flow of content coming of new shows. Now, we might not like the shows, we might think that they're dumb, but they have newer stuff coming so that, your experience on Apple TV Plus, right? Let's just say you like the shows. You're getting a lot of different shows that's going to be worth your time. Right now, Disney Plus doesn't do that. You're frustrated, and it totally makes sense. And there's going to be other people frustrated. Disney Plus right now doesn't have an experience, at least for adults.
Yes.
Kids, totally. But for adults, it doesn't seem like there's a good experience right now.
Yeah, and that is really what it boils down to. I mean, as an adult, there's just not enough content that I'm drawn towards. There's only so many times somebody, like, if you're subscribing to Disney Plus because you really like Star Wars and you're checking out The Mandalorian, you finish the weekly episode of Mandalorian, what are you going to watch? There's not, I mean, like, you can only watch the original movies, all the movies that they have that are Star Wars so many times. There's not like a back catalog of Star Wars television series that you can watch, for an entire week leading up to the next episode of The Mandalorian. It's just not that.
Well, that's why I don't know if you've heard, but that's why all these adults are going back and watching these old school cartoons that they grew up with, like DuckTales and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Probably because
there's just a lack of content
with other stuff, so they're going back to the cartoons they knew about.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I
jokingly say that, but that's not necessarily a good answer,
Right, but I mean, like, that's the truth. I mean, like, I've introduced my youngest kids to a show that I watched as a kid because I figured, well, I don't need to watch this show in depth. It can be on in the background while my kids watch it, and I know what they're watching because I know what the content is. Yeah, I mean, it's very much like that. And the thing is, like, I look at it like this. I previously had a massive DVD Blu-ray collection. So at the peak of it, it was about 1,200. And over the years, I've slowly gotten rid of movies and TV series that I had as part of this collection because I kept thinking, how often am I actually going to watch this? If it was something I would watch, then I would get a version of it in digital and then just add it to my digital library. But if it was something that, like, and the TV series is something that I always go back to. When it comes to TV series, I rarely am going to go out of my way to pick up a TV series from 20, 30 years ago and watch it all the way through. It's very unlikely. And there's plenty of people who do that, and I applaud them. But, like, even when I look for stuff on Netflix, eventually when I look at stuff on HBO Max, I don't see myself going back and watching something unless it is really, really good and I never saw it, or it was really, really good, but I don't remember the ending because I just have a hard time rewatching something that I remember exactly how it goes because I don't pay attention that well then because I already know how it all works out. But it just comes down to it. I feel like for adults, there's not a lot for this service to offer. And I think, and I hate to say this because I don't want to put down the service because it's not something that I don't, it's not like Apple TV where it's such a limited amount. There is a benefit to having this, especially if you have children. But as far as being an adult and doing it, I feel like Disney really tugged on the nostalgia strings for a lot of fans who are, able to pay for their own subscription by offering these extremely discounted subscription rates ahead of time because it locks you in for X amount of years. You've already prepaid, so you're not going to get rid of the service. And then in turn, you get the service and you realize, well, there's not as much content here as I'd like. And like you said, I keep seeing the same thing about people talking about how they're watching these old cartoons and movies that they watched as children. But the reason they're doing that is because there's not a lot of newer content that's geared towards adults. A lot of the PG-13 or R stuff that's not Star Wars or Marvel gets pushed over to a different service because it's not family-friendly content. And that concerns me because, price point-wise, it's a good price point. There's no arguing that. But I feel like the people who go out of their way to say that they're unsubscribing from Netflix so that they can have Disney Plus, they're not going to have nearly as much content that they would have over at Netflix. And they're not going to have content that's geared for their specific age group because there's only a limited amount of content that is on Disney Plus for people who are older than 13 years old. I'll just leave it at that.
See, and now this might go down a totally different rabbit hole, but this is why I subscribe to the idea of Disney Plus should have I know that they're trying to buy out, or they are in the process of slowly buying out that other stake that I think Comcast owns into Hulu, but this is where I would just love to have Hulu in the current version of Disney Plus merged all into one. To where obviously you can't do the $6.99 price point anymore, but everyone will have something that they want to watch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the thing is, I think the problem is that Hulu, because of the current state of Hulu, we are in a situation where Hulu isn't getting as much of the content that you would expect. Like Disney's making this big deal about how they rolled a lot of their content out onto Disney Plus, but it's all the family-friendly stuff, and it's a lot of the stuff that isn't going to appeal towards adults. While Hulu can easily be bundled with it, Hulu still doesn't doesn't have all of the other content that Disney, has or owns, that is all the adult stuff. Some of that stuff they still have licensed elsewhere, so it's not going to be on Hulu, at least for the immediate future. But yes, like you said, I would love to see Hulu become, we talked about this last week, FX, all the FX content is going to be over on Hulu. That's a great boost, because FX content is almost on par with at least some of the stuff that HBO offers. So there's some really good stuff that FX has offered, and that is definitely stuff that's geared towards adults. But I'd also like to see some of the back catalog of, some of the Touchstone Pictures films that are rated R, like the Jerry Bruckheimer films. And these are not necessarily great films, but they're enjoyable to watch. The Jerry Bruckheimer films from the 90s, like The Rock, Con Air, those rated R films that will never ever pop up on Disney Plus, but they were technically Disney films. I would love for those to pop up on Hulu, or Enemy of the State with Will Smith. Like, these were films that existed within the confines of Disney when they were trying to expand their reach. But now you can't find these movies anywhere unless you own them, and they're not cheap to own because they're owned by Disney. Everything that Disney owns is expensive when it comes to purchasing them. So Hulu would be a great place for all of that content. That, when I say adult, I'm not saying like it needs to be rated R material, but just basically anything that's not necessarily family friendly. There's plenty of shows that air on ABC that are never going to pop up on Disney Plus, but could be on something like Hulu and offer people the ability to watch them. So it's just, I want to see that.
See, this is where it gets confusing. Almost, they're trying to do two things at once, and it's like, well, why consolidate all that in one and just like every other app have a kids section?
Yeah.
And I mean, even in Disney Plus they have a kids section, and it's like, why do you need to separate the two? Like, I know that Disney has a unique brand, and I get that, but you can combine those two portfolios, those two services, and still maintain the Disney brand.
Real quick, I want to make a comment about something you just said. Disney has this kids section. I've actually utilized that feature with my kids, and one thing I've noticed is that they're like very strict about what they show. So my daughter, who's 5 years old, I have no problem with her watching PG rated shows or movies or television shows. No issues whatsoever. It's completely fine. I mean, when you compare some of the recent stuff that Disney's launched, it's almost always rated PG. But there was a movie that we couldn't pull it up because it wasn't G rated, and I thought, why is it so strict? Why are they creating the strict age ratings if it's a kids thing? It should just be kids appropriate, and that's what it is, not based off of their age. I know on Amazon, this isn't on Amazon Prime Video, but I know Amazon on their kids Fire apps or their Fire tablets, there's like an age range where you can tell them, I'm okay with content from this age range to this age range, and then Amazon will kind of just based off of the developer age ratings say, okay, this is the content that is meant for you. But I don't like that if you go into a kids app, you can't watch content that's rated PG. I just thought that was very odd. And honestly, I'm not sure how much of the content that's on Disney Plus isn't appropriate for younger children in general. I mean, like, sure, the Marvel movies are rated PG-13 and there's suggestive things, but like, where do you draw the line when it comes to parents being able to control what their children watch compared to Disney dictating what their kids can watch? Just wanted to point it out while you said it, because otherwise I was going to forget about it.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I found that funny when I was setting it up, and I was setting up for my stepdaughter of her profile, and I'm like, well, it's Disney, like, I know Disney, whatever. There's like a kids toggle, and I'm like, well, why? Okay, this totally invalidates the whole point of keeping them separate when you're just gonna already add a flag of them being a child. I don't know. To me, if you roll back the tape, right, and you listen to me about 4 or 5 episodes ago, I was all in on Disney Plus, and I was giving crap on Apple TV. Now I feel like I need to change that statement. I'm not saying that Apple TV needs to deserve praise, but should have been less harsh on Apple TV, and it should be more harsh on Disney Plus, because I don't see the reasoning to basically replicate yourself twice. Hulu has the infrastructure, has the user experience set up, has apps everywhere. They probably could have avoided the first day, not blunder by Disney Plus, but the first day difficulties of Disney Plus. You would have all their content there. You would have enough content for everybody, and essentially just put it at the bundle price. Just because right now you get Hulu and Disney Plus and ESPN, but let's leave them out right now for like $12.99. That's a great price. You get a lot of content, not comparable to Netflix, but good enough. You have everything there, and you could just be good to go. And I know that I just don't understand. I know that I'm kind of repeating myself now, and I'll leave this topic. But the more I think about Disney Plus, the more I use the app and I experience what's going on, I just am worried that Disney made a bad decision trying to separate their two businesses of Fox and Disney, and this is going to bite them in the butt later.
The only explanation I could see for this is that they're trying to run it in a similar path to the way that Warner Media had explained when they said, we're looking at HBO Max pairing with at&t TV Now, and we're looking at that. There was an interview that was done with John Stankey, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. I think we're going to hold that discussion point until the next episode. But there was a question that was brought up about content being created for HBO Max and whether or not they would welcome content from other companies such as Sony or CBS or Paramount or whoever, Universal, whether or not they would welcome content for HBO Max specifically for their service. And with Disney, while there's very few, but I know that there's one show that they have coming up that is it's part of their original scripted series that's actually going to be produced by CBS television studios. Outside of that one show, there's nothing on their current upcoming series that doesn't have dates that has an outside company that's creating content for them. I have to wonder if the intent with Disney Plus, especially with the fact that they already have this bundle option, is that they're looking at it as individually. You can subscribe to these inexpensive options. You can subscribe to Disney Plus for $6 a month. You can subscribe to ESPN Plus for whatever it is, $4 a month. And you can subscribe to Hulu for $8 or $9, whatever it is per month. You can individually subscribe to those based off of the audience that you are. So if you're an adult and you're looking for content, you're going to probably, lean more towards Hulu. If you are an adult that has children, you're probably going to lean more towards Disney Plus. But when you add them all up together, you could have a larger package, which comes out to almost the same price as Netflix's mid-range plan and HBO Max, almost not there, but almost HBO Max's price. And while HBO Max, when it rolls out, their intent is that they will have content for adults, they'll have content for children, they'll have content for everybody. Then on top of that, they're going to be adding more and more content as it goes on too. So while Disney Plus is a great deal fiscally as far as how much it costs per month compared to a service like HBO Max, I have to wonder what the output of content will be that is constantly being added, because while Disney still has shows and movies that they could add to the service as time progresses, they don't have an unlimited supply. And while it's going to take a little bit of time for them to create more and more original series, HBO Max, when they launch, if they have 3 times more content available at the launch date than Disney Plus, then you're already getting a better value. Because sure, you're paying $3 more, or you're paying almost 3 times more, but you're getting 3 times more content. And it's not just content meant for children. It's not just content meant for adults. It's a mix. And that's what I have to wonder about. Everyone keeps bringing up HBO Max's high price tag. And I know that I keep talking about HBO Max as it's like the best service ever, and it's not even here yet. But it's because I'm pretty excited about it, but also because I am already an HBO subscriber. There's lots of content that HBO releases by themselves that I watch on a normal basis, and I consistently watch on a normal basis.
You're going to have a good experience.
Exactly.
In Disney Plus. Your time is going to be worth it.
Yes. And that's the thing. I just feel like maybe down the line, Hulu will, once it's completely 100% owned by Disney, they can start creating a lot more original content specifically for that type of audience that they're gearing it towards. And you bundle Hulu and Disney Plus, and then you throw in ESPN Plus. When you bundle those together, all I can wonder is that if you're getting the same type of experience as you get over at HBO Max, but the difference is that you're paying just a couple dollars less for content that maybe isn't as good as what HBO Max is it really that big of a price difference? Because currently, it's a massive price difference when you're just comparing one aspect of what Disney is offering right now to what HBO Max will offer. It's a huge price difference. is. But overall, if the experience is worth the extra money, is it really that much more money? And that's the thing. Like, Netflix is a good comparable right now. Like, the amount of content that you have at Netflix, they've got plenty of children's content, they've got plenty of adult content, and yes, it's more expensive than Disney Plus. But Disney Plus doesn't have, they've got a catalog of content, but how much of that content is for, I don't know. I'm repeating myself, and I just want to end this on this. HBO Max talked about these 4 quadrants, about how there's 4 quadrants of viewers. There's the older audience, there's a younger audience, there's males and females. You have to basically, it breaks down into these 4 quadrants: male, female, and then based off of the age and where shows end up on that spectrum. If you plotted where Disney Plus's shows are located on this quadrant, I feel like they're skewing very young, and they probably are split between male and female, but they're skewing extremely young. How many people who are, like, let's say the 35 to 50 demographic, the people who actually have a lot of disposable income, how many of those people are going to be subscribing to Disney Plus? Like, we're hearing a lot about it, but a lot of people who are talking about it are younger people. But they're not the people who are going to necessarily consistently stay with something or continue to pay for it. That's also I'm not trying to create any sort of argument, but that's also the age range that tends to expect everything for free. So the price point is lower, and that content that they have is designed for that age range. But what about everybody else? How many of those people who are actually, have the disposable income to pay for a service, how many of those people are actually subscribing to it? Because I would love to see the age range of where the people are who are subscribing to Disney Plus, and then see how many of those actually stick around. Because I don't think it's even remotely close to something like just HBO as it stands right now is, or Netflix. It's just too different of a service.
Yeah, my arguments, I totally agree with you, but my arguments against Disney Plus and their strategy are a little bit different. From a money-making perspective, keeping Hulu and Disney Plus separate is just a bad ploy. Also, I find it so frustrating that if I want to watch something on Hulu, I have to exit out and then go into Hulu to search for it.
Yes.
So first thing, I have to either start in Hulu or start in Disney Plus, run a search. If it's not there, then I will have to move to a different app with a different user experience and run the same thing. That is frustrating.
It's something that we expect because of already technology that exists. This is not something new. And the thing is, if anything, Hulu should have Disney Plus built in as a add-on channel or something like that, so that you can be in Hulu and use the same, be able to view the content that is available in Disney Plus. That's the way it should be, because they're under the same parent company. There's no reason they shouldn't offer that. It doesn't make any sense to make people have 2 separate apps to view content, especially when you're bundling them together. You should be able to view the stuff within one cohesive interface that works for the services that you're bundling together. If I go to Prime Video, I subscribe to, the different channels, like the Showtime channel or the HBO channel, and I search, that content should pop up because I'm subscribing into it and bundling it together within that specific app. And it doesn't make any sense.
I could do that for Showtime. I can do that for HBO in Hulu, but I can't do that for Disney Plus. Yeah. I know it's been a week out, but come on. When you're essentially 2/3 to 3/4 the owner of Hulu Plus, right? They essentially have all the control. They should be able to do something like this. Yeah. When you bundle, you essentially get a free channel in Hulu, so where Hulu, you can control everything. Vice versa, Disney Plus, right? Disney Plus should be able to, if you bundle, have it a one hub to access all of Hulu's content. I know from an engineering perspective, that's going to be hard, but when they already talk about for Disney Plus doing integrations, when Hulu already does different integrations with these products,
right,
it makes sense. Hulu and Disney Plus kind of makes sense, teaming up. Hulu doesn't, not only they partner with anyone that ever really does sports, they have their live TV option, but from their partner integrations, I don't think anyone else does sports. So I guess in my mind, I can easily equate Disney Plus and ESPN in the same group, and having ESPN out to the side. Though you're totally right. If they're all in the same company, they should integrate. But I guess my focus is more on ESPN and Disney Plus first, and then ESPN, just because they're just really weird.
But yeah, I agree. It feels like a missed opportunity if Hulu already offers other channels that you can add as, add-on packages like Showtime and HBO. There should be no reason why they shouldn't add ESPN Plus. The reason they probably don't is because if you have ESPN Live, or not ESPN Live, if you have Hulu TV Live or Hulu Live, if you have that, you get a number of the ESPN channels. So you can already watch a lot of the ESPN content that they offer. The issue, of course, is that then what's the benefit of having Hulu Live along with ESPN Plus if you're watching a lot of the same content? There's no real advantage. So then, in other words, they're trying to push that live version of it. It just, to me, it makes sense. There should be a service out there like Hulu that already offers a lot of content. You can add things onto it like HBO or Showtime. And then in turn, you can also add on other services, smaller services, and then make the stuff searchable within the same app. It keeps you using Hulu more often. You are prompted to look for stuff within Hulu. You know, there has to be something like that, not just searchable, but like actually be able to view it. You should be able to link your Disney Plus and your ESPN Plus accounts with inside of Hulu, or have Hulu add-on options with these other things, just so that it all is in the same exact interface, so you're not leaving the app. They all talk about how they want people to use the app. That's how you get people to use the app, is by having at least the same services that are offered from the specific company, the parent company, all within the same thing. And right now they're not. I think it's incredibly a missed opportunity that you have to go into the services individually if you buy this bundle. It doesn't make any sense. It just cuts down the usage of the individual apps. So projecting for the future, I honestly see that this is something that they probably will do. It's just not a priority at this point in time, because if it wasn't a priority to add ESPN Plus as an add-on feature to Hulu before Disney Plus came, it's not something that's probably on their radar immediately for the future for Disney Plus, even though Disney Plus will have way more subscribers than ESPN Plus. It's just not something that they thought would be something that would be good to implement. And I find that a giant missed opportunity. It's a shame, because HBO Max is out there talking about how they want to add HBO Max as an add-on option for existing providers. And the reason why is because they're already doing it with HBO. It's not really that different than what they're already offering. It's just, it's a service that will offer more content. I know for probably the next 6 months until HBO Max goes, I know I will be talking up HBO Max, because I have high hopes for it, and I'm not dissuaded by the higher price point, because I see the value in something like that, if for no other reason other than the fact that I'm already an HBO subscriber and I'm already paying $15 a month to have HBO. So having more content and including the quality content I'm already getting, I see it as a plus. And with Disney, when a year from now, when Disney has a couple Marvel shows in the bank or in the tank, and maybe they have the second season of Mandalorian, and there's a little bit more that they can figure out, hey, maybe we need to get more shows that are geared more towards adults that aren't necessarily rated R or, too adult to be on Disney Plus. Maybe they'll realize that that's what they need, and they need maybe a little bit less of the content that we can typically find on YouTube for free. Done ranting then.
So I know that you have Disney Plus. Was it for 3 years?
Yeah.
Was that this promotional you got?
Yeah.
What would your take be on the service, right? After 1 week, after basically distilling and thinking about what we've talked about for the last 30 minutes, what would you do? If you do it week, month to month, how would you go about, Disney Plus? Would you cancel? Would you just keep it for your kids? Because I know right now for the streaming services, and, we do this podcast, but you're kind of covered since you got it for 3 years. You got it for 3 years. You're kind of just going to watch it just because. But, what would your thoughts be? What's your take if you just had to do it month to month? What are your thoughts?
If I was a monthly subscriber, I think that I would be in the, if it wasn't something that my children were using, if it was just me and my wife, or if it was just me in the picture and I didn't have children, I think it would come down to simply this. I would treat Disney Plus exactly the same way that I'm currently viewing Apple TV Plus. There's quality shows. I want to see them. I want to watch them, but I want to watch them and not have to pay a price point to watch just a few shows. And that's really what it is right now. If I factor in my children, I can see the small cost that I'm paying, because I think it comes down to what I'm actually paying with the discount because of the pre-order was $4 a month. $4 a month for the next 3 years, and my kids can watch all kinds of content that I personally have no desire to watch. That's worth it. I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. Now, after 3 years, if they decide to raise the price up to like $10 because there's more content that they've added over the 3 years, I don't know that I'd want to pay $10 a month based off of the way things currently are. But as a parent, I can see the value month to month, even at $6 a month. As a adult, I cannot see the value of it outside of the same thing we've been talking about with Apple TV Plus. I would probably, if my kids weren't a factor, I would probably look at this as, I want to check out The Mandalorian, but I'll wait till all the episodes are there. And while I'll be a little bit behind and everybody will have already discussed it, I'll save myself some money by not having to pay for eight episodes of a show. I'm interested in watching The Morning Show to a minor degree. For All Mankind on Apple TV Plus is the show that I actually want to see, but I don't want to pay, $5 a month for 3 months worth of episodes while they release them, because I just don't find the value in that. I don't want to pay $15 for, 20 episodes of television. It just, to me, that's not worth it. I'm one of those people who can never wrap my head around paying $2 for a television episode. It's just too expensive. I'd rather just watch it live or on my DVR and just fast forward through the commercials and save myself the money. So there's a value in it if you have children. There's no question about that. But as an adult, I feel like the level of content that is meant for adults is going to be extremely limited over at least the next 10 months.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like that. I don't want to put my, assume everything for everyone, but I can see that your take is going to be a very popular take among adults. Like if you have kids, great, because they have great brands and great old movies that you could just play and while you're driving, just put on Moana, we're gonna go keep them quiet. Totally makes sense if you have kids. But if you're an adult, I can see Disney losing subscribers over this, which isn't gonna look good in a 10th month span, when really everything that comes down to streaming is not how many subscribers do you get, but it's how many do you keep and how much do you grow incrementally. And I can see Disney's churn rate being abysmal, and that's going to be a big issue.
Yeah, but like I said earlier, the other thing which I don't think is ever going to be something that is public is how are the demographics? What is the usage rate for the demographics that are using it? Because that's the biggest thing. No, Nielsen is not going to be involved in Disney Plus. Disney Plus made a comment about how they have no intention of releasing ratings or numbers based off of the viewing patterns for the shows, and I find that to be kind of disingenuous, especially when Netflix got so much crap about it and they're slowly giving more information than they were. Prime Video has decided to team with Nielsen to make sure that ratings are released. I just find it as a situation where it's like putting on a mask. They're putting a mask over, or they're hiding something because they know there's going to be some questionable things and they don't want to portray themselves if they don't have to in a bad light. It's nothing against them. I see it from a business perspective. Netflix has obviously done it for years and people have given them a lot of crap about them doing it. It's just, it comes down to one of those things where it's they might say, well, X amount of people watched or X amount of people are subscribing, and that might be the only stats we get. But really, if they brag about how many hours of television or hours of content that people are viewing, how many of that is just kids nonstop watching a show for, multiple hours? Because that obviously adds up way more than, other aspects. And that's also why Netflix has created so much children's content. And when you look at their original series that are kids content compared to their adult content, they create a lot of children's content. A lot of that children's content gets multiple seasons because kids absorb this stuff at enormous rates. I get the whole reason why Disney's doing what they're doing, but it just is one of those things where I think just the numbers that we typically see about we have 10 million subscribers, or within the first week X, we had over 3 million hours of content viewed or something. I think those stats are just propping up information that we don't have as far as, well, how many of these people who are watching it aren't just kids sitting nonstop watching cartoons for hours upon hours, because that's a much better number. Netflix doesn't brag about how many children are watching Netflix. They don't talk about that. They hype up the original content that they, in some cases, spend a lot of money on, but in turn, they hype about how many people actually watch that content. And Disney can do the same thing, but I wonder, if you have The Mandalorian and that's the only scripted original series you have, and you talk about how, their estimates put it at, 20 million people watched the first season within the first month or whatever. Well, that's a great number, but out of the 20 million, how many of those 20 million people watch something else?
Yep.
That's the biggest concern. So, all right. So this episode obviously went way longer, but I feel like the discussion about Disney Plus was a good one. But just as a forewarning, in case you don't listen to the content episode, next week's, because of Thanksgiving being here in the States, we are going to actually refrain from having normal release episodes regarding the content and the streaming services. Instead, we're planning on releasing a couple of shorter episodes regarding just some discussion points, so you can look forward to those. But that we're going to hold back on the news. The next time we'll be talking about the streaming service news will actually be in 2 weeks from the time you guys are listening to this. So just be aware of that in case you happen to stumble. We'll still have content that will be available, but it's just going to be some other content that we're putting together. So with all of that being said, I want to encourage you guys to head over to the website to check out the release calendar for all the content that we have that is coming to the streaming services. In the coming weeks, we'll be adding a lot more content for December as the streaming services release their calendars for the month of December. In addition to that, you can email us at thestreamingwars@gmail.com. You can send us topics that you'd like us to discuss. We do have something that, we do have a comment that came in from a listener in the Philippines who said that they're interested in hearing our takes about the international market. And we do have plans on talking about some of that. Some of it is we're limited on what we know, based off of the news that's actually talked about here in the States, but we do have every intention of discussing these services as they roll out internationally and their plans for international rollout, because that is important to the overall services. So in addition to that, you can follow us on Twitter and our Discord for all the latest articles and trailers released from the streaming services and about the streaming services. That's where you can find that stuff. Outside of that, you can follow us on Instagram for our latest episode announcements that we have new episodes released. That's where you'll find those. You can find this podcast available at all podcast platforms as well as YouTube. And if you are so inclined, we'd greatly appreciate if you could give us a 5-star review. And if you can't give us a 5-star review, please take the time to send us an email, thestreamingwars@gmail.com, to let us know what would make this what would make the show a little bit better to push it towards the 5-star. Because while we appreciate all ratings, we of course appreciate the constructive criticism more than anything, so we understand what you guys, the listeners, actually are looking for. So with all of that being said, for Tony and myself, this has been the Streaming Wars, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the Streaming Wars. Check us out on Twitter and Instagram. Also consider supporting us on Patreon. Links can be found at thestreamingwars.io.